Hey y'all, in case we haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Maddie Cheever. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist, a diabetes specialized coach, and the proud owner of a not-so-functional pancreas. I'm also the face and founder of Type 1 Type Fun, a diabetes education and advocacy company on the mission to make Type 1 less overwhelming and way more empowering. If you're tired of confusing advice, craving real-life strategies, and ready to feel more confident in your blood sugar game, you're in the right place. We're turning burnout into breakthrough, backed by science, good vibes, and a whole lot of fun. Are you ready? I sure am. Let's do this. Okay, real talk, y'all. If you or your child has type 1 diabetes and blood sugar spikes hours after eating, like everything looks great at first and that meal went great, but then out of nowhere, you're at like 250 or 300, you're not crazy and you're not failing. This is a real thing, and today we're going to finally talk about it in depth. So in this episode, I'm diving into one of the most requested topics in my entire type 1 diabetes education experience, which is how to handle those delayed blood sugar spikes after meals like pizza, pasta, burgers, meals that are high in fat and protein, and they just totally wreck your blood sugar, especially if you have that meal at dinner. It just wrecks the overnight numbers and your energy the next day. This isn't just a theory. This is the exact strategy I use, and I've taught to almost 300 people with type 1 diabetes, LADA, or parents of T1D kiddos. So if you felt stuck, confused, or totally alone trying to figure this out, this episode is going to change things for you. Let's get into it. All right, y'all, we're jumping in right now, but I actually have to say before we do, this is the guide. I want you to have this ready to go for this whole episode. If you are listening and you don't already have this guide, please go grab it. The information is in the description of this episode. I want you to have it. So we're walking through it. This is like a one-on-one. So here we go. So we are learning how to handle those blood sugar spikes hours after eating. This is step by step. I'm going to give you some of the disclaimers, some of the information about it. There's a lot to process here, so I don't expect you to memorize this. You don't have to completely understand things overnight. This is just a starting point. And by the way, if you are questioning your carb ratios, your correction factors, if things aren't making sense for your blood sugar management, I would say maybe we need to start there because this guide is advanced. It is not a beginner guide, okay? So you have to have those numbers, those ratios, those strategies down. If you don't, I still say listen to this, grab the guide, make sure you have it, save it for another date. Something will click. I know it will. But if you're still questioning those things first, I want you to figure those things out. So let's say you have those figured out and you're ready to jump into this exact situation that happens. You know it happens. It's frustrating. It's overwhelming. It's annoying. You lose sleep. Hello, if you're a parent, I'm so sorry that you're losing that sleep. I know I've done that to my mom too many times, but we're going to figure it out together. So I want you to have this guide. Hopefully my talking has been long enough so that you have it downloaded. If you don't, just pause and come on back. But first things first, of course, I've got to give the medical and legal disclaimer. This guide is for educational and informational purposes only. It's not specific personal medical advice from your doctor, your endocrinologist, or your diabetes care team. I know I'm a provider in this space, but this is just a guide. It's just a starting point for you to understand these types of concepts. So if you need someone on your team, ask your doctor, ask your provider, or hey, find me. We'll make sure we figure it out together, okay? But this is specifically how to handle delayed blood sugar spikes, and I want you to understand what those spikes come from, okay? It's complex. It's a lot. And we're going to figure it out. So specifically, what you'll see me kind of reference throughout this guide is something called high fat and high protein. The acronym I use a lot is HFHP. So if you are on a phone or a device where you can search for that, then you'll find some of those key terms. But whether you're using a pump or manual injections, this happens to a lot of us. And I'm going to teach that to you step by step. You may not have heard this before. So we technically, this is like kind of a potentially overwhelming topic. So I'm going to hold your hand. We might need insulin for fat and protein, right? Okay, that's the connection we have to make. Because if you don't already know that, then okay, this can kind of feel a little overwhelming. Now, why didn't we get taught this? I don't know. But you know that those spikes happen. You need the insulin for it. We're going to figure it out. So take a sec to read through those first pages. And what I will say too, my disclaimer, my personal disclaimer, I've taught this to so many people. And every time I do, I've gotten some feedback from endocrinologists. Love you guys. If you're an endocrinologist listening, I love you. Thank you for being here. But a lot of endos have said, hey, don't do that. That's a terrible system. Don't eat those foods. Don't, can't, shouldn't, what, won't, blah, 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 blah. There's limitations, right? And I respect that. I think that's a valid thing because the clinical knowledge is just not up to date. Like it's kind of the, we have to get everything approved. There has to be tons of research and and it takes years and years. So it's not their fault, okay? But these strategies that we're talking about, they're pretty new, okay? They're pretty advanced and they're different from the basic clinical recommendations you're going to get. That's why a lot of endos have said, hey, we don't love this. So just to be clear, again, I'm not telling you to do this, but if you do try it and if you tell your endo about it, they may not love this strategy. I respect that. But in my mind and from my experience, my endocrinologist, when I figured all of this out, was not a team player, so to speak. And I have respect for him, but I did not feel that we were aligned in our values. And so he said, hey, don't do that. And I said, what? Don't eat pizza with my friends on the weekend. Don't have my mom's spaghetti, which is my favorite meal, and cue M&M. What am I going to do? Skip dessert for the holidays? No. I'm going to eat those things and I'm going to figure out how to bolus for them. So if you want to avoid these types of delayed spikes, avoid the things that cause them. But if you're like, nope, I agree with you, Maddie, I want to live my life and I just want to figure out how to manage the blood sugar, that is why this has been created. So throughout this document, I will be talking about everything in milligrams. I know I have a lot of listeners, though, who are located in Canada, the UK, Saudi Arabia, some Australia folks. I know you guys are millimoles. So just so you know, I put a conversion in there. If you don't already know it, basically you take the milligrams, divide by 18. That's your blood sugar. So when we say our blood sugar is 200 and you say your blood sugar is 6, you're like, that's the craziest high. And we're like, that's the craziest low. That's the conversion. So keep that in mind if I'm going to speak milligrams, but if you speak millimoles, now you know how to convert. The other thing too, like I said, you have to know your numbers. If you're using sliding scale, this might be somewhere where we see if we can transition that into a correction factor. I've done this for a lot of folks. It's a little bit complex, but you just need the math. If you are on sliding scale and you just don't know how to make that conversion happen, reach out. Please let me know. I'm happy to very quickly, very easily give you that conversion. You can also probably Google it and figure it out, but just let me know if you need any help. Absolutely. CGMs are going to be super advantageous for this. So if you are using a manual blood sugar monitor, you just need to take more words are hard. Sorry, guys. You have to check your blood sugar more, but it's still possible. If you have a CGM, though, this is really helpful. So if you don't have a CGM, maybe that would be something to look into with your providers. Also, this is something that gets confusing. I said, technically speaking, you might need a little insulin for protein and fat, which is true, but this is different than supplements, okay? So protein bars, protein shakes, protein powders, things like that are a very different situation. So that is not what I'm talking about at all today. And I don't want us to get that wrong. So I've added a little information on that there. Something else too is digestion. Digestion, if you have, let's say, digestive tract paralysis, if you are requiring digestive enzymes, maybe you had your pancreas removed, something like that, this could work. You probably need some extra details for it. So if that's the case, then I recommend researching those questions, reaching out, whatever you need to do to feel confident. So in this guide, if you're following along, then you should be on the page that says, how do you know if this is happening to you? Well, first of all, if you're here because this happens to you, you know it's happening to you. But I wanted to give you some examples for what you might see. So these are actual examples from this past month of folks that I work with or myself who have had these spikes, okay? So if it happens at dinner, this first page, by the way, like that person had dinner in the evening and then their blood sugar was high all night, that makes sense. We've had a lot of those situations throughout. I tried to add a mix of Dexcom and Omnipod, Tandem, and Medtronic. So I think there is at least one of each. So whatever system you might be using, you should be able to find a system that works for you, or at least that feels a little familiar. If you're not using any of those systems and you're curious what it might look like, feel free to send me a screenshot. If it is, I'll let you know. And if not, then we can talk through that too. So, all right. I feel like we have to dive in. There's so much information in this, I know, but I want you to know what's going on. And I want you to be super clear about what this guide is and what it's for and what it is not as helpful for or where you should be. I don't want you to question it. I don't want you to be confused. So if you are seeing those stubborn blood sugar spikes a few hours after you've eaten a meal and it feels like it happens for no good reason, you're not eating another meal, right? And if anyone relates to this at all, maybe your endocrinologist is like, oh, stop your midnight snacking. You're not having a midnight snack. Your blood sugar is just spiking. This is absolutely it. But you also have to know that the rest of this document, it's a lot. It's advanced. Like I said, this is not beginner. So you have to know your ratios and you have to be confident to experiment for the most part. There can be a little bit of wiggle room. I think everyone has a little bit of that wiggle, but we have to be comfortable experimenting on our own outside of our doctor's office with this strategy. Now, again, if you don't want to do that, I respect that. And of course, talk to your doctor. But if your doctor is the type of doctor that says, hey, don't do anything unless I say it, they're definitely not going to appreciate this strategy. So maybe have a conversation with them about what this might mean for you, especially if you're seeing those trends. Reach out to them and ask. But I want to talk a little bit about the timing of this, because I've already kind of given that hint, right? The 2 to 5 hours later, the delayed spike, like the timing seems to be an important part of this. And it is, okay? The timing is essential because here's the thing, we're going to get a little nerdy sciencey, but if you're willing to stick with me on this, okay? So when we think about digestion, like I said, I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist. I learned this in school and it's still accurate to this day, thankfully. Our digestive systems haven't changed too much in the last few years. So when we are eating things, this sounds a little gross, but get with me. Let's say we have like a sandwich or a burger or something like that. When you're eating it, you take a bite. That bite is the first step of digestion. Why? Because we are mechanically, physically starting the breakdown of food. I know it sounds gross, but like your teeth are the first part of digestion, which is kind of cool when you think about it. I don't know, maybe I'm just a nutrition nerd, but I think it's really cool. So that's where digestion starts. But not only does it start physically, it starts chemically too, because carbs start the digestion immediately in our saliva. We have salivary enzymes that help to break down carbs. So they're on our tongue, on our cheeks, in your lips, gums. So if you're not already familiar, you could potentially help to spike someone's blood sugar if they're unconscious or if they can't swallow for some reason. You could put like a glucose gel or a cake gel or something like that in their gums. And that does start to help blood sugar. Now, again, if there's an emergency situation, please call 911. Please do everything according to whatever their provider has recommended. But that's just that's part of the reason why, if many of you have learned that, because carbs start digesting there, which is pretty cool. The salivary enzymes. I don't know. Again, maybe just a nutrition nerd, but I think it's pretty dope. So that starts. But then when we swallow things and they go into our stomach, we have our stomach acids. Actually, hang on. I know this is nerdy, but okay, let me grab this. This is my pillow. My sister-in-law gifted me a pancreas for my birthday one year, which is the funniest thing. So we are digesting, right? And now we're in the stomach. And in the stomach, we do some churning. We have some acids. I won't go into too much depth because I don't want anyone to feel queasy. But the stomach is where we really start to break things down. And then we move into the intestines. That's where, hello, pancreas. Pancreas is going to do its job, okay? And here's the thing, though. We technically need that insulin for carbs, for sure, and maybe a little bit of fat and protein. I want you to keep with me, though, for this idea because there's a lot to understand about it. And so I'm not just blatantly saying, take insulin for fat and protein. I'm not saying that at all. So stick with me. It's kind of confusing, kind of complex. But before I even really explain it, I see a lot of mistakes happen with this process. So I've been a little bit dramatic in this guide about explaining those spikes. And if I may be so bold, I'm going to be dramatic again, okay? Because I'm just going to say it. I'm going to say it maybe probably once, twice, 3 times. I don't know. You cannot get these wrong. You cannot get these wrong. You cannot get these wrong. What can we do? We cannot get them wrong. Yes, I think I heard you. You did great. So mistake number 1, you cannot or you should not in this system, in this strategy, we're not taking insulin upfront with carbs for the fat and protein, okay? What happens? Like imagine if you have type 1 diabetes or if you take care of someone with type 1 diabetes, you'll know what this means, right? Imagine if you were like, okay, I want to be proactive with my insulin today. So I'm going to take my insulin for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm just going to take it at 8 a.m. What would happen? Think about it. What would happen? I know you know what would happen. That's a super drop. If we don't have the carbs to account for that, we are going to really be in a dangerous situation, right? That could be potentially life-threatening. So we're not doing that, okay? So we know that we have to separate these things because that digestion, you remember teeth, saliva, swallowing, acids, churning, small intestine, it takes a while, okay? So we have to align the insulin timing with when the insulin is needed. Crazy. I know that makes sense to a lot of you, but I like to make sure that that makes sense because that's one of the biggest mistakes I'm saying or that I see. And you cannot get it wrong. It has to stay separate, okay? Has to stay separate. Mistake number 2 is stacking a correction on top of what we're talking about. Let's be clear. If you see that spike hours later, I'm going to flip to a page. And if you can, maybe you can flip to it as well. This first example of a Dexcom. This overnight spike, okay? This overnight spike that happened, we are already taking the correct, that's what the math here is intended to do. We're taking the correction for exactly what's happening there. We're not also correcting. This is the correction, okay? So it's math for the correction. We're figuring it out with specific intention. So now that you know that, the 2 things that you cannot get wrong are number 1, we're not taking all this insulin at once. And number 2, we're not taking this insulin plus a correction. This is the correction, okay? Hopefully this is making sense. Hopefully I don't feel too scary yet. But how do we know if this is working? My favorite thing to recommend is to track everything. What happened? What did you eat? Where was your blood sugar? How did it spike? How did it drop? How did it do this? How did it do that? What was the fat and protein? If you can have more details, I know it sometimes feels a little overwhelming, but more data is going to give you more info. Now, if that feels overwhelming, I respect that. And in full truth, to understand this strategy, to really get it, you have to know the data. Like imagine if you were just guessing at carbs in the beginning, but you were trying to figure out what the carb ratio was, but you're like, yeah, maybe this cup of rice is 80 carbs. That cup of rice is not 80 carbs, it's 45, right? So we have to know that it's 45 so that we can put it into our 1 to 15 carb ratio, let's say, so that we can take that 3 units of insulin. Because if we just guess that it's 80, but it's actually 45, what's going to happen? We go low. Same with this. So initially, what you should do if you can is track everything, grab all the data initially. Long term, though, in full transparency, estimation becomes a lot easier once you got it down, right? I know we've all had that meal. You've had that evening out. And honestly, you kind of crushed it with blood sugar. You didn't expect it, but like you did your best at estimating and it kind of went well. Or maybe it didn't, but you're like, oh, I know that I went under because I was worried about going low, yada, yada. Right? We all estimate to a certain extent. Eventually, estimation is a thing. But we have to get familiar with what this means first. Same with how we had to all learn about carbs. What the heck is a carb? What the heck does carb mean for carb ratio? So we have to learn those things first. So if you think about it, kind of like that initial carb education, same, but different. I hope that that makes sense. But so this high fat, high protein delayed bolus is specifically designed to be mindful of digestion, which is why I said if you have digestive concerns, there might be some other factors to consider. But we are talking about pizza, pasta, burger, and fries. I think that those are some of the examples I have throughout this document. Really, we are talking about holidays or fried goods, baked goods, potentially anything that has that extra fat and protein. So that's something that I want you to be mindful of. Now, here's something I get a misconception of a lot. Like I said, I've taught this to a lot of people. Some people are like, oh, well, according to the science, this is high fat and high protein. But if it doesn't impact you, then boom, you don't need this strategy. Okay, now that's one of the most important lessons you could possibly learn from this entire episode is if you don't need it or if it doesn't happen to you, your body and the experiences you have matter a ton, okay? Because like, here's a basic example. A lot of us, I think, are taught to pre-bolus 15 minutes ahead of time. Well, here's the thing. Sometimes that works for me. Sometimes I don't need a pre-bolus at all. And sometimes I have to have a pre-bolus that goes into like 20, 25 minutes. I know some people who need 30 minutes. Okay. So what does that teach us, right? The textbook will teach us potentially where to start, but then you and we have to understand how to manipulate our true needs, okay? So if you're taught 15 minutes, but you actually need 20 minutes, you're not wrong. Your body is your own. Maybe you should be doing that 20 minutes. Of course, double check with your doctor, but those are the things we have to adjust for. So when we think about this fat and protein, the reason why I give that preface is because typically I'll wave my little red flag if we've got about 30 grams of fat or more. Now, to be clear though, like I said, everyone is individual. I have had people that are impacted starting at 15 grams of fat, and I have people that are not impacted until 50 grams of fat, okay? Your body is your own. This is just an idea, just a starting point. It's never perfect. It never is. But we want to see the patterns, learn what our body needs, and then take action, okay? So, also, by the way, me saying red flag, no judgment. Like if you want to have 50 grams of fat, then great, enjoy whatever that thing is. But that's where I would start to say, okay, are we going to get that blood sugar spike? Maybe. We're not judging. All food is great food. We are just learning what happens. And if your blood sugar spikes because of that thing, we just have to know how to correct for it, okay? I'm not telling you not to eat anything. I'm just telling you how to dose for it, okay? So the very basic framework, I want you to read through this document to actually make sure that you understand how to dose for it. But I want to give you the very simplified overview. So step 1, bolus for the carbs. That makes sense, right? I would tell you to do that for any meal. If you need a bolus for the carbs, take your insulin, do your carb counting. You know the drill, right? Unless you're day 1. If you are, welcome to diabetes. I'm sorry you're diagnosed, but we are here for you. If you need anything, you have diabetes all over the world, okay? So if you're new here, I'm sorry. If you're not new here, you know you have to take insulin for your carbs. You do your thing, okay? And then now we get into that fat and protein, okay? So step number two, we have to figure out how much fat and protein we have. Maybe you've logged, maybe you're estimating, depending on where you are, depending on what your comfort level is. Like I know I can estimate at this point, but also, mind you, I've taught this strategy for years. I have a whole nutrition degree, okay? And I've been tracking food. I tracked food almost every day for 6 years. So all of that data together, I can estimate really comfortably. If you're like, that sounds so scary, then don't do it. That's okay, right? So find where you're comfortable. Remember, this is your journey and no one else's, yours. So you have to figure out the fat and protein. And then you have to find your personal percentage of how much insulin you need for the fat and protein, if you even need it, okay? So most people, I find, fall between a certain number. I want you to start conservative. I want you to be mindful. All of the numbers, it gets kind of confusing, but all of the numbers are in this guide. I want you to look through it and I want you to ask yourself what you need. And I'll give you some guidance at the end, a little bit more of a realistic way to figure it out. But this math is just a great starting point. I know there's a lot. The range, by the way, the big range, 30 to 70%. How do you know where you fall, right? What if your doctor was like, okay, you need insulin for carbs. Take something between a 1 to 10 to a 1 to 30 carb ratio. What? Where do you start with that? Well, that's what we're doing here in this process. We're breaking it down. We're making sense of things, okay? So you will figure it out. Keep reading, okay? So you're going to use, this is why people get confused. By the way, you remember when I was dramatic earlier and I was like, you cannot get this wrong. You cannot get this wrong. You cannot get this wrong. Yeah. Wow. Say that 3 times fast. I sure did. So anyways, sorry, just silly goofy here. But remember when I was like, you cannot take the insulin with the carbs. This is why people get this confused, is because we're actually using our carb ratio to help us. Because think about it. We count carbs to get a carb total. We put that into our carb ratio to get the insulin needed. And then we take the insulin, right? Well, with fat and protein, what are we going to do? We have fat and protein. So what do we need to figure out the ratio, the number. So this is why that can be helpful. Now, again, I recognize that this gets confusing. So if you want to pick a different ratio or a different number, you totally can. Like I said, this is your own journey. I've had some people who are like, that gets too confusing. My carb ratio is, let's say 1 to 15 or whatever it may be, but they pick a different ratio for their fat and protein. That's fine. Or if you want to, you can just use the carb ratio, but know that we're not talking about carbs, okay? Not anymore, at least. We already took the carbs for the meal, hopefully. So it's not carbs. It's not carbs. You cannot get it wrong. Please don't get it wrong. I've seen people go dangerously low. Do not let it be you, okay? And then here's the last part. So we've done the math. We've figured out the insulin. We've gone through the ratios, all that stuff. And then eventually we treat that blood sugar with the number of units of insulin that you need because of the fat and protein. Okay. Now this can get confusing. But let's go through an example, okay? So let's say that we have let's say that we have, I'm trying to think, a burger, okay? I think that that's actually in this guide. So there's a burger example somewhere in here, and it's got a certain amount of carbs, fat, and protein. What are we doing? Well, first things first, however many carbs are in this burger, this is the example. Step 1, bolus for the burger. Pretty much nothing changes except for the fact I just talked about this with one of my good friends, John, who is one of my closest buddies, and digestion can come into play here. So the thing that you should know is that if you notice that your carbs are not digesting as quickly because the digestion is taking its time, you may, like if you typically have a 15-minute pre-bolus, here's that individualization thing, you may not need a 15-minute pre-bolus. You may need less. You may need the same. You may need a split dose. You may need an extended dose. That gets really complex potentially. And so just know that, okay, yeah, if you've ever, by the way, I just posted a video about this today where I was talking about the different trends of a blood sugar graph and what that tells me. So if you've ever had that thing where, let's say you're starting at a 100 milligram per deciliter, and then you drop down into the 70s, and then you have carbs to correct it. You just had a meal, right? You've eaten it within the last 30 minutes, and then you spike back up, and then you're stuck in the 300s. Well, the total insulin might have been correct. The timing of the insulin was off. What are we talking about in this whole document? We're talking about timing, delayed 2 to 5 hours. We're talking about timing. So that's important for the carbs too. So I just like to clarify that because it gets confusing. But so there we go with step 1 in our realistic burger example, carbs. Then do the math. Then figure out the proportion, percentage, whatever it is that you want to use. Then calculate the insulin dose. And then once it's needed, separate from the meal, then you probably want to take that insulin, okay? Again, dramatic for a reason, I know. So some other things that come up, and you'll see this throughout the guide, but what if you eat again before that delayed spike hits? I get this question a lot. This is another thing that can impact digestion, timing, total, everything. Not to be dramatic, it impacts everything, okay? So what you have to know is, like, for example, a lot of the times what I will see is we have a high fat, high protein meal. We went out. Let's say you went to Texas Roadhouse or something like that, and you got, I don't know, whatever you got. I hope you enjoyed it. But maybe there's a little bit of high fat, high protein to consider, okay? And then you're at Texas Roadhouse still, and you're like, oh my gosh, but we're going to get a dessert because that's tasty. Well, heck yeah. First of all, enjoy. Like I said, not judging. I love it. I do it too. I'm using Texas Roadhouse as an example because we just went the other week. So it feels very relevant. Okay. So like I said, I eat what you eat. I'm here for it. You just have to know how to dose for it. Okay. So if you have that dessert, right, you're like, okay, well, what do I do now? Well, you know what to do. You have to take for the carbs. Some people will ask about insulin stacking. If you know you need the insulin for the carbs, it's not the same as insulin stacking in the way that's not helpful. So just a clarification there. But so if you need the insulin, take the insulin, however much you need, that's up to you. And then from there, right, the digestion piece, what changes? Not much. It's just that maybe digestion will get delayed a little further. Maybe you need a little more insulin than you calculated because you had an awesome fried cream cheese or what is it called? Fried cheesecake, something like that. And then, oh, that has fat and protein too. So now you got to add that to your math, got to redo the math. That's okay, right? You just have to find those numbers. That's totally fine. Find those numbers though. So there's a little bit of information on how to specifically find some of those numbers. But I think the ultimate thing that I will leave you with is this is your journey. You want to find and eat what you want to eat, and you just want to dose for it. So again, no judgment, no lack of kindness. I've been there, done that plenty of times. In fact, that's why I can teach it now, because your girl has made mistakes and figured it out, okay? So you are not alone. And here's what I will say too. Just in case you're listening, and if you're still listening, I love that you're here. I want to give this bit of information to you. If it doesn't work, if you take the insulin and it doesn't work, I know I've been there, and you might have been there too, and you're like, dang it, I suck. Why haven't I figured this out? It didn't work. Like I did all this hard work and it still didn't work. Here's my hot take, and I respect if you don't agree. I really do. But if you did all the math and it didn't work out, I know that feeling is not a great feeling, but you crushed it, okay? Sure, maybe we didn't get the result we wanted, but you were so intentional with learning and growing and trying. You experimented. You are super awesome. You are badass, if I may say it. You're confident. You got this, okay? You experimented. You did something that a lot of people are scared to do. You did it, okay? Take that credit. Sure, it didn't work out, but here's the thing. Here's my favorite thing about that. If it didn't work out, what happened? Did you go high? Did you go low? Was the timing off? We can figure those things out. There is an answer. If it works, fan-freaking-tastic. You crushed it. Give yourself a pat on the back. You're doing something incredibly difficult. And how cool is it that you accomplished that, okay? That's amazing. You deserve so much credit and validation for that. And if you need some, by the way, just DM me. I'll give you the credit. Heck yeah, let's celebrate together. Why not? If it doesn't work out, though, you still deserve that credit, that validation, because here's the thing. Here's the coolest thing about it. Number one, you tried something. Number two, it's tough. Number three, it's not perfect. It never will be, and that's okay. Number four, though, personal favorite. No matter what happened, the data, you can use that to your advantage. If it didn't work, what happened? Was it total? Was it timing? Did we have too much, too little, too soon, too late? What happened? No matter what happened, we can backtrack the math eventually and figure it out. So even if you don't feel like it's a win, it's a step in the right direction. And I think that that is a huge win. So remember to give yourself credit. This is tough, but diabetes is tough. So are you. I think I will say that every day, forever and ever. But with that being said, I think there's some other details and information and little bits here in this guide. I want you to understand it so thoroughly, so in depth. If anything gets confusing, I want you to reach out. I want you to feel comfortable asking. I always say with everyone I work with, if you have a question, I assume that I didn't explain it right. I assume that it's on me, not you. So if you ever have a question, it's never dumb. It's never too little. It's never not important. It is important. It's valid. It's valuable. And I want to be able to help. So I think the takeaway though, watch your data, learn your patterns, tweak as you go. It's okay. And if you can, track your results. It will help you to understand what's actually going on. So in the guide towards the end, because I think that having the information is so important, I have a little bit, I call it a blank page, but it has areas where you can fill it out. So I know it's technically not a blank page, but it says, what is the meal? What was your carb bolus? What is your high fat, high protein bolus? What worked? What didn't work? What would you do if you could do it exactly the same, but tomorrow? Or sorry, if you could have the same meal again tomorrow, what would you do different? That, I think, by the way, if you can just take that as a critical thinking question, if you ate this meal again tomorrow, what would you need to change to see a slightly better blood sugar result? If anything, if nothing, that's okay. But that's where we go back to, even if it doesn't work, you are a step in the right direction. I'll give you an example, okay? I had a meal this past week that I haven't had in so long, and in truth, I don't remember how to bolus for it. It's high fiber. There's a lot of carbs. It's super tasty. It's me and my best friends. Like, it's our meal. So it's no one else's. It's just her and I. So it's my Soleil meal. And so that's her name. Her name is Soleil. So it's my Soleil meal. It's her Maddie meal. So we have this meal. It's our thing. We always had it in college. It's our thing. But here's the thing. Y'all, my blood sugar did not work out. I thought I had it, and oh my gosh, was I so far off. It's been a while since I've been that far off, because usually I kind of have it, but you know what? That's okay. I played around with a lot of factors, and I was not successful. And I admit that. That's okay. I'm not here to be perfect. I'm just here to learn, right? We all are. And so what did I do, though? That day that I created the meal, I had a gut feeling. I was like, you know what? I don't think that this is going to go perfectly. So I actually created 2 servings because I didn't want to have to cook and clean the dishes again tomorrow. So lazy girl hack, just make 2 meals and then save one of them. But I had the same meal the next day. Guess who crushed it? This gal. Why? Because I looked at the data, I understood the numbers. I do have an insulin pump, so I could see exactly how much insulin I got compared to what I took. I figured out where I went wrong. It was with the fiber, because it was a fiber supplement product. And I forgot, right? Maddie forgot. You got to take the insulin for that, girlfriend. Not everyone does. I do. And so I just forgot. Okay, that's okay. But I learned from it. And so things like that happen. I'm a professional diabetic. Hello. And I still get it wrong. So if you get it wrong, give yourself credit, give yourself a pat on the back, and take one step forward. So with that, I know there's a lot to do when it comes to those little adjustments and that interpretation, but I hope that giving yourself credit no matter what just contributed a little bit to your mindset and to your heart. I want you to feel good. I want you to feel strong. I want you to feel capable. I want you to feel knowledgeable. And I want your blood sugar to work out. But if it doesn't, I still think that is the coolest bit of data you can learn from, because you can do something with it, okay? So there's some other situations throughout this guide, and you can take a look through. I want you to read this so in depth. I know it's big. I know it's long. It's 41 pages. It's a lot. I recognize that. That's part of why we're doing this episode too, is because I love to listen. I love to watch. I don't love to read as much, but that is part of why we're here. So if you need any help, if anything doesn't make sense for that, for delayed spikes, for carb ratios, correction factors, exercise, nighttime highs, lows in the middle of the day, stress, anxiety spikes, literally anything, I got you, okay? I want you to be supported. I wish someone would have done it for me. So that's why I'm doing this. I do this because I wish little Maddie had a now Maddie. And little Maddie did not have a now Maddie, but you have a now Maddie. And that can be me or someone else. That's okay too. But I hope this was helpful. This is the guide. If you have questions, like I said, reach out. The information for this guide, like I said, is in the description. But for now, I hope that you learned something. I hope this is helpful. I hope you feel valued and validated. And that's all I got. So for now, I will say stay fun, and I'll talk to you sometime soon. That's it for today, my friends, but the fun doesn't stop here. If you liked this episode and want more real talk diabetes support, come hang out with me on social. Just search Type 1 Type Fun, all words, or head to type1typefun.com for tools, tips, freebies, and real-life resources you can actually use. And if this episode made you laugh, learn, or feel a little more seen, feel free to leave a comment, give it a like, share it with someone you love. But until next time, live empowered, be silly, have fun, and eat some carbs.